Hey guys, welcome to Algebra 1. We are on lesson 23 today, so I hope you all are ready to go. Today's lesson is actually very simple. We are talking about solving equations, and this is what we've already been talking about. It's just giving you a little bit more practice with solving your equations. Remember, there's two basic rules for solving your equations. That you can add or subtract a number on one side as long as you also add or subtract that number on the other side, and your value will not change. You can also multiply or divide a number on one side as long as you multiply it on the other side. We use that in order to solve for our variables. So if I have a problem like this, negative 5m plus 6 equals 8. My goal is to get my letter by itself, the m. So because I'm trying to undo what I already have to go in reverse order of operations. Normally, in order of operations, we do our multiplication first and addition and subtraction second. But, like I said, we're trying to undo something to solve for a missing variable, so we're going to instead start with our addition and subtraction. So I'm going to start by subtracting 6 from both sides. This leaves me with nothing over here, just negative 5m now. Oops, my marker's having trouble. There we go. Negative 5m, and then 8 minus 6 is 2. So I have negative 5m equals 2. Now what do? I divide both sides by negative 5. So m equals negative 2/5. Then you need to check your problem by putting the negative 2/5 in place of m, like this. Negative 5 times negative 2/5 plus 6 equals 8. The 5's cancel. Negative 2 times, or negative 1, that's what that is now. Negative 1 times negative 2, that's a positive 2, so you have 2 plus 6, 8 equals 8. And you check all of your problems that way. That's the only problem we're going to check together for the sake of time, but your problems on your homework you need to check in that manner, okay? Okay, one thing I want to show you before we move on to the next example. Sometimes when you are dividing by a negative, things can get confusing. So there is another option that you do not need to use right now especially, but you just need to be aware of it. Where I have negative 5n equals 2, I can get rid of that negative and make this positive by multiplying both sides by negative 1. Because remember, as long as I multiply something on one side, I have to multiply it the other side by that same number and my value doesn't change. Since I'm multiplying a negative 1 times negative 5, my 5 doesn't change because 1 times anything equals itself, but negative times a negative gives me a positive answer. So I have 5n equals, now the 2 is a positive. So positive times a negative equals a negative answer. So it becomes negative 2. But then you divide by 5, so you still get m equals 2/5 in the end. So your answer doesn't change, but you can get rid of the negative so that you're not dividing by a negative. That's something that will be more helpful later on, but it's something that you should be aware of starting now. Okay, let's solve. Our next example. Turn a little bit here. Negative 7k minus 4 equals negative 21. So the first thing that I need to do to solve this problem is get rid of the 4 that I'm subtracting. So the opposite of subtracting a 4 is adding a 4. So I'm going to add my 4 to both sides. Here it cancels out my 4 and I'm left with 7k equals, here I have negative 21 plus 4. What does that give me? Negative 17, right? Because it would be 21 minus a 4, since the signs are opposite, which is 17. The absolute value, the greater absolute value is 21, so I take the negative because negative 21 has a greater absolute value. So it's negative 17. I divide both sides by negative k. by negative 7. So k equals, it does not equal negative 17 over negative 7. Since I have two negatives, I know that a negative divided by a negative is the same as a negative times a negative. It gives me a positive. My negatives cancel out. And so I have positive 17 over 7. That's very, very important. Let me write that out bigger so you can see it. It would be positive 17 over 7. Check out example 23.3 in your book on page 104 if you want to see that, see the steps a little bit bigger for you. Okay, two more examples. 1/5 m minus 1/2 equals 3/4. Well, we're going to start out by doing our subtraction. Since I'm subtracting 1/2, that means I need to add 1/2 to both sides. So I'm adding 1/2 to this side. I'm going to do it this way. Plus 1/2 equals 3/4 plus 1/2. So on this side, my 1/2 cancels out, and I'm left with 1/5 m equals. On this side, I need to have fractions with the same denominator in order to add them. So my 1/2 and 3/4, their least common denominator would be 4. So I'll change the 2 to a 4. I multiplied 2 times 2 to get to 4, so I multiply my numerator times 4, which gives me 2. Now I add my fractions. 3 plus 2 is 5, and my denominators stay the same. So now I have 1/5 m equals 5/4. To get rid of 1/5, I'm going to multiply it by its reciprocal. So I have to multiply this side by its reciprocal. Over here, the 5's cancel out, so I have m left. I can't cancel anything over here. 5 times 5 is 25. 4 times 1 is 4. So I have 25 over 4 is my answer. Check it by putting 25 over 4 in place of m and do the math. All right, let's do one more before you go to your practice. 0.4x minus 0.2 equals negative 0.16. We'll start by adding 0.2 to both sides of my equation. Now I know some of you are thinking, Miss Ashley, do I have to put the 0 in front? No, you don't really. Technically, yes. Scientifically, yes. And that's why you see it in your book. But for the sake of your math, I don't mind if you're missing a 0. I will not make your problem incorrect if you don't put the 0. But technically, yes, you are supposed to. So over here, it cancels out, and I'm left with 0.4x equals. Now be careful. Remember when you are working with decimals that you have to line them up. So you have a negative 0.16 plus 0.2. Since it's a negative and a positive, you have to subtract. The 0.2 is greater. So that's 0.2 minus 0.16. So we need to annex a 0 and subtract. 10 minus 6 is 4. 1 minus 1 is 0. So it becomes 0.04. Make sure you're very careful about that. 0.04. It's not 0.4. 0.04. Because the 2 is over the 1, you had to annex a 0 over the 6. So it's 20 minus 16, which is 4. But you bring your decimal point straight down, so there has to be a 0 in there. Okay? Keep going with our problem. We divide by 0.4. So x equals, well, we move our decimal point over 1. Move our decimal point over 1. Because when you divide, you can't divide by decimal points. You have to move them over. So we get 4 into 0.4, which is 0.1. So x equals 0.1 or 0.1. would be the answer, okay? Let me know if this decimal problem confused you at all, okay? If you need me to help you, walk you through it one more time, I would be happy to do that. If not, we are good to go. So pause your video and do your practice. Okay, you should be back from doing your practice. Letter A, x equals 2. B, x equals negative 2 over 63. C, x equals x equals 0.13, not negative, sorry. X equals 0.13. And D, x equals 0.08. Let me know if you have any questions about those. And if not, just go ahead and keep going on your work, and I will see you later.